myriad of career choices with very different pathways, such as apprenticeships, college courses, or vocational qualifications. How can employers help young people navigate these confusing options and find the right solution for them?
It's definitely something that you have to plan for. So when you're sitting down and looking at your local environment, your local population, you have to get quite aware of your local statistics and almost like what's on the, I'm going to say, the available pool of talent for you. So we have full national coverage ourselves. We have to think about where is your employment located. So thinking about, in this case, if we're in Reading, you've got a very high educated population, but we actually have really low unemployment. And that's great at one level, but it also means that there's a kind of a stronger proposition of go to higher education. And you then, as the employer, have to think about, well, what programs can you run? So a good example would be encouraging work experience. So huge fan of allowing people to come in, be it for a day, be it for a week or 2 weeks, because sadly the schools have lost their way a little bit in encouraging work experience. So we publish a work experience program, so I'd encourage employers to think about that and sharing that with local schools. It can be local communities, and you can get to a place where you just need one young person to share it on TikTok, or encourage that little viral share of practicing in a different workplace. But you also, I would say, get to see the benefit of almost just seeing new insights, new skills, new learnings from younger people that have not even sort of come into the workplace. So when you've thought about your local area, thinking about your succession planning, it's important to consider apprenticeships. They are quite tough for young people to find. So when you're watching the careers days that can go on in local schools, local colleges and local universities, they do a fabulous job of trying to get larger employers to come in and represent themselves. So I would really encourage, if you can, try and get along to a local careers fair, and one day you can potentially inspire and recruit, even if it's just one talent, but it can be many, because there are often hundreds of young people in this space trying to get into that world of work. And then when you want to step into a more formal apprenticeship program, there are numerous, the catalogue of choices of courses for these young people is enormous, but not often is it true that employers know that. So, a certain size of employer has to be mandated to purchase an apprenticeship pot and has to contribute to that each month. But even if you're in the business that can't access that, you can tap into larger employers where they gift apprenticeship money away, and you can encourage young people to come. If you're a smaller business, a smaller medium-sized business who don't do that, there are really good programs, and there's some excellent suppliers, and they can be all around science, maths, technology, office work, warehousing. It really is vast. And I think the more employers think about their local proposition, the easier it is to kind of get on board with encouraging that young talent to come into our business. But the traditional routes of thinking about an apprenticeship can be things like LinkedIn, and that can be quite limiting. So you've got to be open to trying new methods of sharing, publishing it on a website, maybe doing a video and encouraging people to see it in that respect. And internally, there's the other side of this argument where typically you can see, as people are coming towards the end or latter parts of their career, actually they can often experience a fundamental shift of wanting to pay back. So trying to encourage mentorship and trying to encourage people to buddy up with a more experienced colleague, that can be really beneficial for someone where actually they're at a very formative stage of their career, the young person, and the upper generation can be finding themselves, I want to pay back. So you can find a great match in that respect. And I would always encourage employers to be thinking, well, that is your future succession. So if you don't put some time behind that, then you kind of got a wasted opportunity. And I suppose finally, when you're thinking about encouraging almost younger people to come into the workplace, it is tough for them to access educational routes. So always looking at your recruitment practices and anything that does to, you know, invite in selection, try and look and see, are you being exclusive in some way where you are not meaning to push a certain category of person out or a certain type of individual, because sometimes you have a bias that's loaded in that practice but you can't see it. Well, why not invite a group of young people to come together and look at that and just see if there's any words you might be using that's just putting them off at the point of entry. So that can just be a really healthy practice to adopt.
And we have our final question, Amanda. Mental health and neurodiversity are key issues affecting people. How do you see the workplace evolving to accommodate these issues?
It is a great question, and it is very high on our agenda as well. It's been something that's been bubbling and boiling for a number of years. I would definitely say there's increasing dialogue in general. So if I was to go back probably 10 years, you may not have even heard of the term neurodiversity, and there may be some people here that are not as familiar with it either. And so we have to encourage people to, first of all, become familiar with, well, what is mental health? What is neurodiversity, and how do those topics differ? Because one is not necessarily the other, and they can be independent. So mental health, as we frame it here in Kyocera, is anything that's affecting your cognitive capacity. And that can be something that's acute, it's happening to you right now and short term, and it can be something you've been diagnosed with. So something like depression, where you're living with it on a long-term basis. Whereas neurodiversity actually looks at more at how the brain functions and how your world is organised, is kind of how I would try to describe it. And some people will have, if you sort of think of it in a linear way, like on a spectrum, some people will have some high functioning capacity where they are super intelligent around mathematics or reading, and other people it might be extreme forms of creativity in art and or I'm going to say language. Either way, it's starting to realise that different people show up with different, almost just differing cognitive behaviours. Honestly, it for me has always been there personally. I don't think the variation was probably as distinct and as crisp, but I can certainly see evidence where we have probably learned people's different ways of working and different patterns. What's different now is certainly in younger people, certainly in schools and educations, they're doing a huge amount more to bring awareness to the way people operate, the way people think, and the way they are capable of contributing to work. And because the world of work is changing, we actually need more creativity. We do need a divergence of opinions, and there has been a kind of a stale workforce for a long period of time where it's been assumed that, for example, we're both females, maybe females have been underrepresented in the workforce. Yeah, so potentially there's an exclusion on gender, but there can be an exclusion on neurodiversity. Yeah, so someone who thinks differently, who holds a different opinion and challenges the way you work, might have been previously excluded. So schools do a fabulous job of bringing awareness to that difference, but also showing how it can contribute. So why having such a high functioning skill can be really valuable, but also knowing it can be limiting. So it's kind of, how do we bring that thinking into the workplace? So what should employers be doing? You should be trying to educate around the differences, and you should be also really high on the inclusivity agenda, making sure that you're bringing the awareness, but you're bringing inclusion at the same time. And yeah, it can be really hard to have quite a diverse workforce, really hard. But if you don't have it, what percentage of the market are you not tapping into? So bringing in someone who's got high functioning in their neurodiverse way. So high functioning might be they're actually excellent at coding. So in our business, we do need people that do coding, and they just are off the scale. So they are bringing a different skill set that another person just can't begin to understand, comprehend, or do. So both skills can be valued. So like, we really value the coder, we really value the salesperson who may be bringing a completely different social set of skills. Both are needed, and we need to discourage competitiveness, encourage inclusion, but recognise that that does need training, it does need relationship skill management. And I think as we digitise more and more, I'm hoping that we leave a little bit of room for the human skills, so we can actually encourage more humanness rather than more digitalness. And I think we've probably lent a little bit hard on, you've got to learn Excel, you've got to learn Microsoft, you've got to be able to do this type of coding. But actually, I would like to think we can do more around compassion, more around empathy, and more around understanding humans and what we bring to the party. So it's here, like as in neurodiversity is here. It's got an umbrella. I just want people to recognise that even in our umbrella understanding is hugely broad. So trying to label people isn't always helpful, but it certainly increases our awareness. So more of the awareness and more of the inclusivity. That would be a great thing.
Interesting. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you for inputting, giving all your input and feedback for today.
Thank you for having me.